I think that everybody has a role to play in this. And I'm so glad you asked the question in that way because I think just in general, we live in silos. And if a thing doesn't affect us, we're like, well, that's not me. I never went
Yeah,
through it. I
right.
don't know anybody who went through it or what have you. But we all have it's to me, it's like racism, right? I think that people, because race is such a issue that we deal with in a more direct way in the country, people get it when you say we all have a role to play in ending racism or preventing racism, what have you, right? And so if you are not a person of color, if you're a white person, and you understand that, you understand that you cannot support a culture where racism thrives or exists, and you understand that you have to use your privilege in service of people who have less privilege. I think those are concepts people get. It's a very similar thing around sexual violence, right? Racism is violence in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of violence attached to this on this side of the spectrum as well. And so even if it's as simple as not of dismantling rape culture, right? If you don't know somebody who has been abused or sexually assaulted or whatever, interrogate the ways that you support rape culture in your everyday life, right?
Either by not
By
speaking up or by laughing
not speaking
or
up,
something.
laughing at rape jokes,
Yeah.
victim blaming or victim shaming. Like there's several ways that just the average everyday person allows rape culture to thrive. That's a very simple thing that we can do. You can
Yeah.
read a book, Google things, you can figure out how to be more of a person who doesn't support that.
Yeah.
And then also, I think that the everyday, we have to, culture shifts, I don't think that this moment is an actual culture shift. I think that we are at the very tip of the iceberg of figuring out how to shift the culture, right? There are several things that have to happen before we have a full-on culture shift. But one of those things is that we have to model different behavior. We have to not just use the rhetoric of, making change and culture shift. We love
We've
words.
come up with our new policies
Oh,
for
yeah,
or
yeah,
this
yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Values.
In some ways, I think that's why people are really more comfortable talking about sexual harassment in the workplace in this moment. It's a serious issue, and it should be definitely dealt with head on. And we really haven't had a national dialogue since Anita Hill about sexual harassment in the workplace. But I think people think, let's talk about that. We'll create some policies and some laws and some rules, and and then we'll be okay. Look,
Yeah.
we fixed it.
Right.
And there's a whole spectrum of sexual violence that we're not
Yeah.
just dealing with.
Yeah.
And so I think the other thing people can do as individuals is keep interrogating and educating yourself and figuring out how you can. Our communities are where we should feel the safest, right?
Yeah.
When people come home from like drug rehab and things like that, they tell people don't go back to the same community where you use because you're susceptible to use again and those kind of things. And I think about all of the ways that we stay in the places where we were harmed,
Yeah.
right? We still live in these communities in the country where we were harmed. And so while we may not have choices about that, we do have choices about how we fix that community.
Yeah.
That's something that we decide together. An individual healing journey is something that's very personal, that you have to make decisions about yourself, and ours will look very different.
Right. Right.
But a community healing journey is something we do together. We have to make those decisions together, and we have to move forward doing that work together.